time to ask because I have to wait a few seconds for these folks
And we discussed how difficult it can be. And we came to
well, we do it just these people. Good. All right. That should have it in here. Where's the green one, I think? Yeah, the green one for Windows, for Mac. Okay, good. All right. So the Cahoots are here. All right. And you might as well have glorious Kahoot music. And here they are, my Cahoots. 123.5a. Okay. Now loading. And looks like the participants found their way back. Okay, there we are, 176.708. Although as you can tell, it's fabulously inaccurate because I have the online attendees. But anyway, this is compliance. Nobody looks at it, but management will yell at me if I don't turn it in. So it's perfectly fine if it's inaccurate. You get used to this. This is a big issue in security when you're doing stupid things just because management makes you do it. Like the Macs in the lab have to be locked up. They didn't have the key, so I brought up my lock pick. So I picked the lock, locked it, and closed it again. And I say, all the students know they pick locks too. And they said, okay, it's locked. You're complying now, and off they go. So the fact that it makes no sense doesn't matter. I'm doing what they told me to do. So anyway, I have 23. I'll wait another 5 seconds. Looks like that's it. Hey, this is pretty good. Okay. So what's the free tool that will let you log into a Windows system without a password? Okay, UBCD works, Conboot works, but it's not free. All right. So what free tool will find hosts most quickly? Yes, yes. All right. Okay, NetDiscover. That was that in Kali Linux. Really works too. Okay, if a firewall is blocking access, what will nmap say about that port? That's filtered the most secure state. Unless, of course, you think your firewall might have vulnerabilities, but that's more rare than the operating system behind it having vulnerabilities. All right. All right. You send a SYN to a closed port. What does the server do? All right, it says reset. That reminds me, there was Dan Kaminsky started something a couple of years ago of TCP jokes. So a girl is in a bar and a man comes up to her and says SYN, and she says reset. So anyway, all right. So that's how it goes. All right. So you send a null packet to a closed port on Linux. What do you get? All right, you get a reset. A closed port on a Linux system will reply reset, even if you send it a garbled packet with foolish flags. On a Windows system, it can do almost anything. All right, so there's the winners. There seems to be a defect in this free product where it doesn't tell me the name of the winner anymore, but such is life, I can get it this way. William and Cam and the face. All right, so I think we got 15 minutes. We might as well continue here. Let me go back to the slides and let's carry on. So Nessus was a vulnerability scanner, much more than just a port scanner. Been around since '98. It's not free completely anymore. As we said, there's a limited free version, but there's pay version for the full product. So the free clone is called OpenVAS, which forked from it and tried to stay free. Anyway, for a long time, it had a separate client and a server. Now I'm not sure that's always true. But anyway, it's been around for a long time. It runs on many different operating systems. It can do a very thorough scan, and I saw a recent review that said that this is the most highly rated and most popular vuln scanner. So, all right, it is quite a job to scan with Nessus. It will ask you if you want to try dangerous scans or not, and in any case, it will take hours to scan the server. First, it will port scan and find all the open ports, and then it will send a whole bunch of attacks against all the open ports to see if it has this vulnerability and that vulnerability. That's how they all work. So they have basically a whole bunch of CVEs, not all the CVEs, but a lot of CVEs in there, and they have special code to try every possible attack or some kind of probe that will tell you if it's vulnerable. And so they'll give you a long list of results. Here's Nessus finding a bunch of things. Yeah.
So at the beginning of the class, you said that all this stuff is legal as long as you don't cost the companies.
Well, a port scan is considered legal. Doing an entire vulnerability scan like this is more questionable. I think when I did an Accunetric scan against the City College network, it took 24 hours, but after 12 hours, it caused serious problems on the network, which is fairly common. So I wouldn't do this without permission. These scanners are very noisy. They send a lot of traffic. The one when I scanned City College several years ago with the Accunetric scanner the student brought in, it found that we had a page called Mailman. It was a really old Linux mail serve list. I don't know if anybody even remembers mail serves. Back around in the days of IRC, there were these mail serves where you would join a list and then you'd get emails almost one step above BBCs. Anyway, we had one page there that hadn't been touched since the 90s. So it had about 20 fields, and every single field was totally unfiltered. So the scanner sent like 100 different attacks into each of 10 fields and found all these vulnerabilities. So it created 10,000 emails to the administrator of garbled form submissions, which filled up an email queue and screwed everything up. So, that's the kind of thing that tends to happen. So be aware. Vuln scanners like Nessus are not innocuous or gentle. You really shouldn't run them against live networks. You should run them against something like a virtual copy of a live network, or be sure you're aware. This is not subtle and it's not without risk. Yeah?
So a lot of companies will do also using Nessus.
Right.
So do they have certain settings that are less intrusive?
Yes, you can adjust these scanners. The question is, can you make them less dangerous? And you can. Nessus has an adjustment for how dangerous the scans are, and you can also run it slower, and you can specify do this and not that. So I think what you do is you tune it to avoid doing harm. And this is now, a lot of people do continuous monitoring, continuous security monitoring of the network, but mostly all they're doing there is checking for compliance. So they'll do simple scans, like to detect if someone has an unauthorized wireless access point added or something like that. Anyway, so here's OpenVAS, has this little cartoon here. That's the Greenbone, which is based on an old version of Nessus, which then is completely free, and then it moves forward from there as developers may choose to contribute. I don't really know how good it is compared to Nessus. Nessus remains the most popular. I don't think OpenVAS scores very highly in comparison. Sort of like OpenOffice is nowhere compared to Microsoft Office. Even though it's free, that's not enough to make up for the serious lack of features. Anyway, so that's Greenbone running and giving you the answers, so it finds a bunch of vulnerabilities. All vuln scanners will do this. They'll then rate them with color codes or something into serious, medium, and harmless. And you can't trust that. You can't just hand any output of any scanner like this to your customer, or they will hate your guts, because scanners are very inaccurate. They will very often flag things that are not real problems. They will often miss real problems. They will often misunderstand problems. They're really just as good as the programmer. They send some kind of packet to the server and they get the answer and they try to decide what that answer means using a simple algorithm, and they're often just wrong. So you have to take the output and then go manually test these supposed vulnerabilities to find out if they're real and then decide if they matter. Because even if there is, say, a SQL injection in some form that is of no real importance, then it's not really important for the company to fix it. Like, I found this at colleges. They had like a SQL injection in some form that was just used for some colloquium series for the speakers to sign up to give a talk, and they appear to have quit 5 years ago. So it's just sitting there. And even if someone steals all the data out of it, it doesn't matter anyway. So technically they have a vulnerability and a scanner will find it, but in practice, it's not worth anybody's time to patch it. And it's often like that. Anyway, all right, so here it is, finding Fedora update missing, checking for all these updates for Fedora. So you have a Fedora and it's going to check each of them and it'll tell you, these are the missing updates, I guess. And over here it has the risk score. Here you hit the really, really thorny issue of security metrics. This is what's wrong with this business. And I think I already warned you that there is a considerable argument that everything I'm teaching you is total bullshit. We cannot prove how much good security professionals are or security products. We can just say the NSA, Google, Equifax, everybody gets hacked. No matter how many people they hire, no matter how many millions of dollars they spend on firewalls and IDSs and everything, they still get hacked. So are we actually a good profession or are we just a bunch of snake oil salesmen? And the jury is still out. We would like to have security metrics. So we can say your company is a 3. If you spend $1 million, you'll go up to a 4, and that will save you $10 million in hacks. But we're nowhere near that at all. This is completely qualitative and intuitive. We don't even know how much a breach costs. Estimates for how much damage a breach does to your company range from 50 cents per record to $200 per record, based on the real consequences. It is the Wild West. We're in a new field, and the rules aren't clear, and the value isn't clear. So we imagine that taking classes like this, getting certifications, hiring qualified people, buying up-to-date products is making you safer, but we are unable to quantify how much safer and prove that it's really true. So, you know, that's life. I don't know if towns can prove that hiring more cops makes them safer either in the same spirit, but I think they have more chance of doing that because cops have been around longer. We have more statistics about the consequence of having more cops, but I don't think we're in the infancy of this. But they make these ratings of how severe vulnerabilities are, and you got to take them with a grain of salt. People argue a lot about whether a 7 is really a 7 or it should be a 2. That's some kind of rating system for how dangerous it is. Yeah.
On that note, I was listening to a talk from a black hat presenter from a few years back. He was talking about that, different coloring.
Yeah.
And he was complaining that in one instance they found a bunch of greens, which normally don't even get mentioned to the client, and yet these greens were actually pretty dangerous.
Yes,
more dangerous than some of the reds.
Yes, this is very important.
But I mean, with any scan, sometimes you're getting thousands of reports back. So how does the consultant go through all those manually?
This is a very good question. I'm just going to repeat it for the most viewers. He says, there are real cases where you might have 3 or 4 greens which can be used to be a red by a smart attacker. And that has really happened, that minor vulnerabilities, when chained together by an intelligent attacker, lead to complete system compromise. So what you do, and that's why they pay you for your experience and your ability to judge this, and there are no real rules for it. This is like you go to the doctor, they give you a blood test, they measure your heart, and then they tell you, my opinion about your health is this. I recommend you should do this and this. It's not math, it's not science, it's not perfect. They're operating. Don't worry about this problem, but this problem is the important one. You know, there are general guidances, but it's a lot of just how much they trust you and how much your experience is. It's not science at all. It's more of an art. Yeah.
Also kind of interesting because I'm actually working on this right now.
Yeah.
Vulnerabilities
Yeah.
I'm working from a compliance perspective, and we're trying to downgrade those vulnerabilities so they have more sense to remediate.
Yes.
And so all of those severity levels are arguable, and we
Yes.
put it into like this, and we'll do like a calculation based on how the attack is being done. So in our instance, you have to go through bash compose in order to get access to the production environment. And so we downgraded everything into like the JSON vector.
Yes.
But then, you know, we're also having a conversation with security of, hey, like, are you okay with these downgrades? And security's pushing back and saying, no, we don't want to take on the risk of having to, like, if that vulnerability is an actual vulnerability and something happens, we don't want to take on the risk of saying, hey, it's not that here.
Yeah, this is a really important issue, and I'm glad to hear about it. So compliance is the government trying to legislate security metrics. And that's why many people get very, very angry about compliance like HIPAA compliance or PCI compliance, because some government body has said do this and this and this. And they have to make it so you can clearly tell if you did that. Like you have to have a web application firewall. So you have one, but there's no statement about how good it is. So you have a cheap, crappy one that isn't any good, or you have an expensive one that's a lot better, and they're both considered compliant. And like you say, the only thing, this is the problem. You need to have laws, or people would like to have laws in the hope that that would make you more secure. But since the metrics aren't there, the laws aren't very accurate about making you do good things. So a lot of people rail about the evils of compliance because it certainly is true that compliance is not equal to real security. But on the other hand, there's nothing you can buy that's equal to real security at any price. And I'm glad you also mentioned there are general solutions like network segmentation. If you segment off the part of the network and put it behind something like a VPN, then suddenly it's not so much of a problem if it has vulnerabilities because you've really limited who can get in there. And that's the kind of blanket solution that helps. But yeah, it's a big issue. Anyway, I think before I continue, we should take a break. Let's break till 5 after. Give you a 10-minute break, and we'll pick up here. I appreciate the comments and the discussion. This is real important.